A woman once demanded TSA compensate her because a beagle sniffed her purse too enthusiastically. The beagle's name is Chip. Chip does not care. Chip has since sniffed thousands more purses and slept soundly every night. That letter, and 68 others like it, sit in a real complaint archive somewhere. Today, we're reading them out loud. Some are dumb. Some are strangely useful. 1. Somewhere between the boarding pass scan and the shoe bin, a woman at Denver International decided the checkpoint line was her personal grievance office. She demanded a supervisor because the TSA officer made eye contact for too long. Not too little, too much. She wanted his name, his badge, and an apology letter mailed to her home. The officer, who had been on shift since 4 in the morning, blinked slower on purpose after that. Malicious compliance in uniform is a beautiful thing. 2. At LaGuardia last spring, a guy pitched an absolute fit because he had to remove his belt. He argued that his pants would fall down in front of children. Officer suggested he tighten the belt 1 notch before flying. He called that victim blaming. Then his pants fell down anyway when he walked through the scanner, because he was not wearing underwear. The complaint form he filed later mentioned nothing about that part. Funny how memory works. 3. In most cases, a bag of frozen shrimp is a normal thing to carry through security. It is, actually. What is not normal is arguing for 40 minutes that the shrimp are emotional support seafood and therefore exempt from the cooler size rules. There are no cooler size rules for shrimp. She invented them just to argue against them. TSA let her through. The shrimp did not make it. TSA did not take them. She forgot the bag at the bin. 4. A middle-aged businessman in Charlotte insisted the body scanner was reading his thoughts. He wanted a hand search instead, then complained the hand search was too intimate. He wanted a different officer, then complained that officer was too tall. By the 4th request, the supervisor told him the only remaining option was to drive to his destination. He chose the tall guy. Filed a complaint about him anyway. Airports are a special kind of theater. 5. Here is something most passengers do not realize about the liquid rule at security, the famous 3-ounce rule. That 3 ounces is really 3.4 ounces, converted from 100 milliliters, and TSA officers actually have some discretion on the edges. What they do not have discretion on is your homemade salsa in a mason jar the size of a small dog. A woman in Phoenix argued salsa is a chunky solid. Chunky? Sure. Solid? Absolutely not. Her salsa was surrendered with full military honors. 6. Not long ago at JFK, a traveler demanded compensation because the bins were too cold on her bare feet. She had refused the paper booties they offered her, refused to keep her socks on, and refused to stand on the mat. Then she demanded a foot massage voucher. TSA does not issue foot massage vouchers. TSA does not issue anything except the occasional stern look and a firm request to please move along, ma'am. 7. The complaint came in writing. 3 pages long, single-spaced. The passenger was furious that his golf clubs were inspected. His argument was that golfers are gentlemen and therefore should be waved through as a matter of professional courtesy. He listed his handicap in the complaint. 22. That handicap did not, in fact, exempt him from federal screening procedures. Sometimes I read these letters and just picture the person writing them at the kitchen table. 8. At a checkpoint in Orlando, a family of 6 arrived with a live turtle in a shoebox. Not in a carrier. Not declared. Just a turtle. Named Kevin. When told Kevin needed to come out of the box for screening, the mother screamed that Kevin has trust issues. Kevin, for the record, seemed fine. He was mostly asleep. The family missed their flight arguing about Kevin's mental health. Kevin got through security. Kevin was the calmest one there. 9. Here is a real fact that surprises people. TSA officers cannot legally confiscate your cash. No matter how much you have on you domestically, it is not illegal. They can ask questions, they can call in a supervisor, they can flag you for further attention, but they cannot take it. A guy in Vegas learned this the loud way, screaming that they were stealing his winnings. They were not. They were counting them. He kept every dollar. And his volume. 10. A woman flying out of Seattle filed a formal complaint because a TSA dog sniffed her. That is the dog's entire job. She argued the dog profiled her, because it lingered near her purse. The purse, it turned out, had an apple in it from breakfast. Beagles love apples. She wrote 2 follow-up letters. The dog, whose name is Chip, did not respond to any of them. Chip is famously above such things. 11. Among the more creative complaints I have ever seen, one came from a man who claimed his aura was disturbed by the X-ray machine. He requested that his carry-on be spiritually cleansed before he retrieved it. TSA does not offer spiritual services. They offered him his bag back. He refused to touch it for 20 minutes. Then he grabbed it and ran because his flight was boarding. Aura fully intact, apparently. 12. At Miami International, a passenger tried to bring a full-size chainsaw through the checkpoint in his carry-on, with fuel still in it. When told this was, in his words, the definition of a no, he demanded to speak to the person who wrote the rules. That person is technically Congress. He asked for their number. The officer offered him a checked bag option. He chose to leave the chainsaw with his brother in the cell phone lot. Somehow that made it worse. 13. The wheelchair complaints get me every time, not the real ones. The fake ones. A man rolled up to the priority line in a rented airport wheelchair, was screened as a wheelchair passenger, and then, once past the checkpoint, stood up and jogged to his gate. An officer stopped him. He filed a complaint about being harassed for exercising. That is not exercise. That is fraud with wheels. 14. There was a woman at Newark who insisted her wig be screened separately in its own private bin away from other passengers' items. Fine. Reasonable, honestly. Then she demanded the wig go through first before her shoes, out of respect. TSA is not in the business of respecting wigs by order of arrival. Her wig went through with everything else. She has not, to my knowledge, flown Newark since. Their loss, presumably. 15. Real quick, a legitimate piece of info. Those little TSA locks on your suitcase have a master key that officers really do carry. It is not a myth, not a scam, not a marketing trick. If they need to open your bag, they can, and they will leave a little note inside. A guy in Boston refused to believe this and demanded to witness the key. They showed it to him. He accused them of making it on a 3D printer just now. Some people cannot be helped. 16. Down at Dallas-Fort Worth, a gentleman in his 70s was outraged that his pacemaker set off the metal detector. He had been informed multiple times that this happens. He then demanded the metal detector be recalibrated for his medical condition. The metal detector cannot be recalibrated for one person. He wrote to his congressman. His congressman, presumably, had bigger things to sort out that week. 17. One father tried to argue that his son's juice box was for medical reasons because he gets cranky. Cranky is not a medical condition recognized by the Transportation Security Administration. The juice box was surrendered. The child was, in fact, cranky about it. The father filed a complaint on his son's behalf. The son was 4. 4-year-olds have opinions, but rarely file formal grievances with federal agencies. 18. At Atlanta Hartsfield, which is the busiest airport in the world, a woman decided the perfect time to have a full breakdown about the wait time was during the Sunday afternoon rush. She screamed that she was a taxpayer and therefore should not have to wait. Everyone in that line was a taxpayer. That was the whole line. The taxpayers looked at her. She kept screaming. The line kept moving. She did not. 19. Complaints about pat-downs are the loudest category, by far. Here is a real detail worth knowing. Officers are the same gender as the passenger being patted down. Always. And you can request a private screening room at any time, no questions asked. A man in San Francisco demanded a gender-neutral officer. That is not a category TSA staffs. He got the officer available. He got through fine. He wrote 3 complaints, all the same one. 20. Over at LAX, a honeymooning couple tried to bring a decorative sword through security. It was a wedding gift. It was also, functionally, a sword. When told it had to be checked, the bride cried. When told again, the groom threatened to sue. When told a 3rd time, they both left the sword and walked away, muttering about airport tyranny. The sword sat in the surrendered items bin for a week. Someone in the office named it Deborah. 21. Believe it or not, people try to bring their own snow globes through security all the time. They look small. They feel small. But if the liquid inside exceeds 3.4 ounces, they get pulled. A woman in Denver had a snow globe of the Rockies that she had bought at the gift shop past security in her last airport. She lost her mind explaining this. It did not matter. Rules are rules. The globe stayed. So did she, arguing for another 20 minutes. 22. Over at O'Hare, one traveler demanded that his bag be scanned in a different machine because this one has bad energy. Not broken, not malfunctioning, bad energy. The officer asked which machine had good energy. He pointed at the one 3 lanes over. She said, "Sure, take your bag there." He did. Same model, same software. He said it felt warmer. His bag cleared. Everyone was happy. Nothing changed. 23. At Reagan National, a woman insisted her small dog be walked through the metal detector on a leash. TSA rules require the dog be carried, not walked. The dog weighed 9 pounds. She said carrying him was beneath his dignity. Beneath whose dignity? The dog's? The dog was thrilled to be picked up. The dog was always thrilled to be picked up. That is why she got a small dog. 24. Once in a while, you hear a complaint that almost makes sense until the last sentence. A man at Portland was upset that his laptop had to come out of the bag. Fair enough, that rule is annoying. Then he explained his laptop was allergic to being handled. Laptops are not allergic to anything. Laptops are computers. His complaint ended with a demand for hypoallergenic screening. He was serious. That is the part that gets me. 25. A grown man at Houston Bush cried actual tears because he had to throw away a bottle of hot sauce. Not just any hot sauce. His grandmother's homemade recipe. Family heirloom. Sentimental. Real. Truly sad. And also, unfortunately, 7 ounces of liquid. The officer offered to let him check it. He did not want to check it. He wanted to carry it. He could not carry it. He poured it out onto a napkin, took a picture, and boarded his flight. I actually felt bad for him. Grandma's hot sauce deserved better. 26. In most airports across the country, the pre-check line is supposed to be the calm one. Not that day at Newark. A woman in pre-check screamed at the officer because her line was moving slower than the regular line. She demanded a refund on her pre-check fee, right there at the belt. TSA does not process refunds at the belt. TSA does not process refunds at all. She kept her shoes on and her rage on high. Both went through fine. 27. Over the past decade, TSA has caught roughly 6,000 guns per year at checkpoints, and yes, most of them are from people who genuinely forgot. That is the wild part. A man at Nashville brought a loaded pistol in his backpack and, when caught, said his wife usually packs his bag. His wife, called from the security office, laughed for a solid minute before hanging up. He got a fine. She got a story for life. 28. In the world of carry-on food, a wedding cake is not as rare as you would think. Brides fly with cakes. Grooms fly with cakes. Aunts fly with cakes. A 3-tier fondant situation at Chicago Midway had to be inspected because the swab flagged something. Turned out to be the sugar. Sugar sometimes reads hot on the machine. The bride cried. The cake survived. That is more than can be said for most airport marriages, honestly. 29. At the checkpoint in Minneapolis, one woman insisted her breast milk be treated as a passenger, not a liquid. TSA actually has real rules for breast milk. It is exempt from the 3.4-ounce limit. It can be screened separately, and officers cannot force you to open the container. She knew none of this. She yelled about it anyway. The officers who did know waited patiently for her to finish. Then they explained it. She apologized. Rare that. 30. Out at Salt Lake City, a traveler demanded that his cowboy hat go through the scanner on a separate belt, brim up, because otherwise it would lose its shape. The officer suggested he place it crown down on the belt like everyone else. He said no. He said this hat is a family hat. The officer said the family hat still has to fit through the machine. It did. It came out fine. He inspected it for damage anyway, in slow motion. 31. Somewhere in the daily data, there is a real fact worth pausing on. TSA officers see about 2 million passengers a day. 2 million. Every single day. The number of complaints filed is a tiny fraction, but the ones that get filed are, on average, spectacular. Because normal people who had a normal day at the airport do not sit down that evening to write letters. Only the truly aggrieved put pen to paper, and bless them for the content. 32. Back at Newark a few years ago, the complaint about the emotional support peacock actually happened. So did the ones about the emotional support pig, the emotional support duck, and the emotional support miniature horse. The peacock was denied. The passenger wrote a 2-page essay about discrimination against birds. TSA is not the agency that decides which animals fly. That is the airline. But the letter went to TSA anyway, because the peacock, apparently, made it to security. It just did not make it past. 33. Over at Tampa International, one passenger filed a complaint because the checkpoint music was too depressing. There is no checkpoint music. The airport plays soft background jazz. He argued the jazz was, quote, sad on purpose. TSA does not select the airport playlist. Tampa International might have taken note. Or they might have laughed and thrown the letter away. Either way, the jazz continues. 34. When the body scanner flags something on your body, it shows the officer a little yellow box on a generic gray outline, not a picture of you. That has been the rule for years now. A man at Philadelphia refused to believe this and demanded to see the screen. They showed him. He said the yellow box was still an invasion. The yellow box was on his belt buckle. He took the belt off. The box went away. The complaint stayed. 35. Standing in the middle of the checkpoint at Detroit, a woman took a phone call from her mother and refused to move for 11 minutes. When asked to please continue through the line, she said her mother was more important than the federal government. The federal government, in this case, was a very tired man named Greg, who just wanted her to pick up her bag. Greg is a hero. Greg deserves a raise. Greg is still standing there, in spirit. 36. In terms of the laptop rule, most people miss one important exception. If you have pre-check, the laptop stays in the bag. That is one of the actual benefits you pay for. A woman at Orlando, who did have pre-check, took her laptop out anyway, then complained that she had wasted the benefit. That is not how benefits work. She wrote a letter. TSA cannot unremove your laptop. The letter, presumably, is still in a drawer somewhere. 37. At Kansas City last year, a man brought a laminated copy of the Fourth Amendment to the checkpoint and read it aloud, slowly, while the officer waited. When he finished, the officer said, "Sir, I still need to see your boarding pass." He read it again. Second time, faster. The officer called a supervisor. Supervisor listened to the third reading. Then the man handed over the boarding pass. He just wanted to be heard. He was heard. Loudly. 38. At the checkpoint in Cleveland, a passenger tried to argue that his beard was too big to remove from his face, and therefore should not be patted down. Beards are not removable. That was not the argument. The argument was whether the beard counted as clothing or as body. TSA counts it as body. He counted it as clothing. TSA wins these debates. Always. Forever. And the beard got a gentle pat. Everyone survived. 39. In terms of things you actually can bring through security, the list is longer than people think. Full-size cakes, full-size pies, live lobsters, if properly packed, skateboards, tennis rackets, fishing poles, knitting needles, even. What you cannot bring is a sense of entitlement, though many people try. It gets confiscated on site. Politely. 40. Over at Boston Logan, a woman brought a full lobster in a wet paper bag, alive, unrefrigerated, and horrified. The lobster was fine to fly. The bag was not. TSA suggested a proper container. She did not have one. She held the lobster in her hands through the scanner. The lobster went through the scanner too. The lobster's name, she said, was Bernard. Bernard made his flight. Bernard, I hope, made it home. 41. For all the wild stories, there is one category of complaint that hits different. Ashes. Passengers flying with the ashes of a loved one deserve respect and get it, in almost every case. But once at Denver, a man screamed at an officer for wanting to X-ray his mother's urn. That is the procedure. It has to be scanned. He refused. He walked out of the checkpoint, missed his flight. His mother, presumably, forgave him. 42. Every once in a while, a complaint is not unhinged, just weird. A businesswoman at Charlotte filed a formal note because the officer said, "Have a nice day," and she felt it was, quote, insincere. TSA officers say "have a nice day" to about 1,000 people a shift. Sincerity is not the KPI. She wanted a policy change requiring genuine tone. That is not a policy TSA can enforce, or measure, or want to. 43. When it comes to frozen items, they pass through security if they are, in fact, still frozen. Melting counts as liquid. A man at Anchorage brought a frozen salmon in his carry-on, wrapped in newspaper, no cooler. It cleared. Everyone was impressed. The salmon was more organized than most passengers. It sat calmly in the bin. It went through the scanner without complaint. It did not yell at anyone. 10 out of 10 salmon. 44. At the checkpoint in San Diego, a father tried to walk his teenage daughter through the metal detector, holding her hand because, in his words, she gets nervous. She was 17. She was mortified. She let go of his hand halfway through and glared at him for the entire rest of the trip, presumably. Some complaints are filed by the wrong family member. Hers was silent but powerful. 45. For anyone flying with prescriptions, here is how it actually works. You can bring any prescription medication through security in any amount, including liquid. You do not have to declare it, though it helps. You do not need the original bottle, though it helps. A woman at Pittsburgh had every single pill in a rainbow-colored weekly organizer. Officers did not blink. She blinked, waiting for them to blink. They did not. She wrote a thank you note instead. First one I ever heard of. Framed, I hope. 46. Over at Fort Lauderdale, a man demanded to know why his knees kept setting off the metal detector. His knees are metal. He had double knee replacements. He knew this. He forgot. He remembered mid-argument, apologized, and walked through the scanner. TSA officers see this a lot. Metal knees, metal hips, metal shoulders, metal rods and backs. The human body is now half hardware. The machine knows. The person often forgets. 47. Down at the Sacramento checkpoint, the complaint was about the tone of a beep. Not the beep itself, the tone. She said the beep was aggressive. The beep is the same for everyone, at every checkpoint, in every airport. It has one tone. It is not aggressive. It is just a beep. She wanted a softer beep. There is no soft beep option. There is only the beep. And the beep, in this case, was because of her belt. 48. At the checkpoint in Baltimore, Washington, a passenger tried to bring a full-size umbrella that turned out to have a hidden sword inside. He said he did not know. That was the whole defense. Did not know. It was a sword cane umbrella from a costume shop. The sword was real. He surrendered it. He also surrendered the umbrella, which he claimed was innocent. The umbrella technically was fine, but he did not want it back without the sword. Package deal, apparently. 49. In terms of what you can legally record, some people film everything at the checkpoint, and that is allowed, actually. You can film in general airport areas. TSA officers can ask you to stop filming their computer screens, and that is also allowed. A woman at Austin refused to lower her phone and shouted, "This is my content." TSA did not stop her from filming herself. Her video, presumably, is out there, along with her voice, which was, let's say, memorable. 50. You know what nobody tells you about kids? They love the checkpoint. They think it is a game. They put their little stuffed animals in the bin, they wave at the scanner, they high-five the officers. It is genuinely sweet. The complaints come from the parents, always, not the kids. Kids are having the time of their lives. Parents are one boarding pass away from a meltdown. Something to think about. 51. Over at the Indianapolis checkpoint, The complaint was about the direction of the arrows on the floor. Yes, the arrows. They pointed one way. She wanted to go the other way. She followed her instincts instead of the arrows and ended up back in the ticketing area. She blamed the arrows. TSA does not design airport floor arrows. That is the airport. She wrote to TSA anyway. The letter went nowhere. Like her, briefly. 52. In the middle of the Louisville checkpoint, one traveler brought out a full bottle of bourbon from his carry-on. Full size. Sealed. Beautiful bottle. Also, 3 times over the liquid limit. He argued that bourbon is the state drink of Kentucky and therefore should be exempt in Kentucky. That is not a real exemption. That is not any kind of exemption. He surrendered the bottle. He wrote a complaint that felt more like a eulogy. Bourbon deserves that, honestly. 53. At the checkpoint in Albuquerque, a woman demanded her turquoise jewelry be screened by a Native American officer only. There were no Native American officers on shift that day. There were officers of various backgrounds, all trained the same way, all capable of scanning a bracelet. She said the energy was wrong. Energy, again. Second time this list. The bracelet cleared. So did she. The energy, I assume, remains a mystery. 54. Out of every rule TSA enforces, the full-size toothpaste one catches the most people. It is not the guns. It is not the knives. It is the toothpaste. Every single day, thousands of full tubes get tossed. A dentist at Providence tried to argue his was, quote, professional grade. Professional grade toothpaste still counts as liquid. It went in the bin. Dentists, of all people, should know better. They do. They just hope. 55. At the checkpoint in Buffalo, a woman demanded that it stay open past its closing time because she was late. Checkpoints do close. There is a last flight of the night, and then there is nobody there. She banged on the metal railings for a while. The officers, who had lives to get to, waved sympathetically and turned off the lights. Her complaint was long. Her ride home was longer. 56. Down at the Richmond checkpoint, a man insisted on going through the security line barefoot because, in his belief system, shoes are, quote, containment devices. Fine. Barefoot is allowed. Not encouraged, but allowed. He then complained that the floor was cold. Floors are cold. That is what floors do. He wanted a heated mat. There is no heated mat. He walked through with visible regret in every step. 57. In Among the Wild Stuff, a complaint sometimes reveals something genuine about the job. An officer at Nashville was thanked, in writing, by a woman whose panic attack was recognized and gently handled at the checkpoint. She was pulled aside, offered water, and walked through screening at her own pace. That is not a rule. That is a person. TSA officers are trained to spot medical distress. Most of them care. The good complaints are the ones about the good ones. 58. At the checkpoint in Milwaukee, a passenger tried to bring a cheese wheel the size of a car tire. Cheese is allowed. Any size. No limits. What is not allowed is blocking the belt for 4 minutes because your cheese does not fit in a single bin. He used 3 bins. He complained about needing 3 bins. TSA did not invent the wheel, or the cheese, or the bin. But TSA got the letter. 59. Something that regularly surprises people, corkscrews are allowed in carry-on as long as they do not have a blade. Little foil cutter blades count. If your corkscrew has that, it goes. A sommelier at Napa learned this the hard way. He argued the blade was ceremonial. All blades are ceremonial to someone. It went in the bin. He filed a complaint listing the corkscrew by its Italian name. Beautiful letter. Still no. 60. Over at Providence International, a woman filed a complaint because the TSA officer did not compliment her outfit. She had, in her view, dressed up for the flight. She wanted acknowledgement. Officers are not there to review your outfit. They are there to check your boarding pass and get you to your gate. The complaint listed the outfit in detail. Coral blazer, white pants, statement necklace. Sounded nice, not TSA's job. 61. On the topic of service animals, real ones are trained, task-oriented, and covered by federal rules. Emotional support animals are a different category, and airlines set their own policies. A woman at Portland brought a hamster in her purse and called it a service hamster. Hamsters are not service animals. She argued the hamster helped her count. Counting is not a covered task. The hamster was fine. The paperwork was not. 62. At the checkpoint in Raleigh, a man in his 50s tried to argue that his belt buckle was, quote, structurally load-bearing and could not be removed. It was a belt buckle. On a belt, doing belt things. It came off. His pants stayed up. The world kept turning. He kept insisting the buckle held together the entire outfit. It did not. The outfit was, upon inspection, held together by regular pants engineering. 63. Believe it or not, a real complaint at Jacksonville involved a passenger insisting that TSA compensate her for the emotional toll of being asked to remove her jacket. Jackets come off. That is the standard rule. The emotional toll in this case was that she liked the jacket. Everyone likes their jacket. That is why they are wearing it. The jacket went through fine. The emotional toll went home with her. 64. One thing worth knowing about musical instruments, you can carry most of them on, and TSA officers are generally very careful with them. A violinist at Chicago O'Hare had her instrument swabbed and inspected, and the officer knew what he was doing, held the violin properly, gave it back intact. She still filed a complaint. She said the swab, quote, disrupted the resonance. Resonance is not disruptible by a cotton swab, but okay. 65. Down at the Omaha checkpoint, a man demanded that the entire line be paused so he could pray. TSA does accommodate religious practices, including prayer breaks, at reasonable moments. He wanted the entire line stopped. Not just his own pause. The entire line, for everyone, for 10 minutes. That is not accommodation. That is closure. He did his prayer at the side and rejoined the line. Complaint filed anyway, listing the officer as spiritually unavailable. 66. In terms of the prosthetic leg conversation, TSA handles this more often than you think. Officers are trained specifically for prosthetics. They will offer a private screening, and they will treat the limb with respect. A veteran at San Antonio had his prosthetic screened and thanked the officer afterward. That kind of interaction never makes the news. It should. The complaints about prosthetics almost always come from people without them, weirdly. 67. At the checkpoint in Hartford, a woman insisted her decorative candle was, quote, not a candle, but an art piece. Candles are allowed. It was fine. But the argument continued anyway because she wanted the officer to acknowledge the artistic value. Officers acknowledge things like liquids and metal. Artistic value is not in the swab kit. The candle went through. So did the art piece. Same object, different feelings. 68. Once in a while, a complaint just says more about the complainer than the situation. A man at Tucson wrote 3 pages about how the checkpoint made him feel small. He is 6'4". He is not small. The checkpoint did not shrink him. What he meant, I think, is that airports do that to people. They make you feel like a number. But TSA is not the reason for that. The whole system is. TSA is just the face of it. 69. A woman at Las Vegas was outraged that the officer did not laugh at her joke. She had made a joke about her bag being, quote, a bomb of style. You are not supposed to make bomb jokes at the checkpoint. That is a federal thing. She was pulled aside, questioned, and eventually released with a firm reminder. She filed a complaint that the officer had no sense of humor. He does. He just also has a job. Here's the coin flip I want in the comments. Would you rather sit next to the salsa lady on a 6-hour flight, or behind the guy reading the Fourth Amendment aloud at the checkpoint for 15 minutes? Pick one. Defend it. No wrong answer, only telling ones. If any of these made you laugh out loud, the like button costs nothing, and the subscribe button costs slightly less.